The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
Because it is not the government of the people any longer. Most people do not understand the Illuminati.
A new world order. A world where the rule of law governs the conduct of nations.
Conspiracy theories.
It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
A new world order.
Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
It's the Weekend Vigilante Show.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Weekend Vigilante Show. I'm your host, Sheila Zilinsky, joined by my co-host, the one, the only, the thorn in Al Gore's side, and I'm sure he's getting tired of hearing that, Dr. Timothy Ball. The call-in number to our studio is 347-324-3704. We have a very special guest for our listeners. We have a fella that I don't know if anybody's heard of him in Canada, which is interesting. I was like, who is this guy? We have certainly whisperings around the United States about this man. So it's 2016 presidential candidate who announced his intentions of seeking the nomination for office of the President of the United States, Mr. Robby Wells. Welcome to the program.
Sheila, it is great to be on the program with you this evening, and to all the listening audience, thank you so much for taking time to hear about me this evening.
Well, you know, Robby, it's certainly an interesting time to want to run for politics, period, let alone president, with a time of, you know, you look around, you see what's happening with the government shutdown, you see that people, we saw what happened in D.C. It's certainly, it's not really a great time when, you know, these career politicians are absolutely doing things that just are completely, even the people with the most virulent case of normalcy bias are just shaking their head right now. So, you know, it is an interesting time to want to even jump into that kind of an office. So give our listeners an overview of, you know, who you are. Tell us about your story.
Well, Sheila, if not now, then when? And if not I, then who? Because I truly believe that we, the people, have got to step forward right now. And that is why I have taken a stand. And I'm asking the entire country here in the United States to rise up with me. Because it is time for we, the people, to take back this country after what you have seen the past few weeks up in Washington. Even before the government shutdown, we've got elected officials ready to go and bomb Syria. We've got the money to go bomb Syria, and then not even a week later, we don't have money to fund the government. That's nothing more than Washington theatrics. We all knew that in the 11th hour last night that the budget was actually going to be passed, the stopgap spending bill, and of course it was. So all it was both sides posturing, wanting to be able to get in front of the camera to do what they had to do. You know, it's time for us to lay aside our differences. It's time for us to start working together, hand in hand, side by side, whether you're black or white, young or old, male or female, gay or straight, Democrat or Republican, constitutionalist or a libertarian, Green Party or an independent, and whether you are a Protestant or a Catholic, a Mormon or an agnostic, a Muslim, or those that are atheists, or those of the Jewish faith. We are all unique here in the United States. This is a melting pot. We can embrace our differences because we have one common bond. That common bond is we are all Americans, and it's time for each and every one of us to start working together to restore this republic. I've taken that stand. Now, here's the thing. I am not a career politician, and I think now is the perfect time for me to be stepping forward as a presidential candidate. We need a president that's going to go to Washington with thick skin and a backbone that is not going to bow down and buckle under to the special interest groups and lobbyists that have been plaguing Washington, D.C. for decades now. You're talking to, Sheila, you're talking to that candidate right here. As we go on through this program, I want to let everybody know everything about me. I'm probably the most transparent candidate you're going to find, which is another thing. We've got to have transparency up there in D.C. All these scandals have got to go.
So, Robby, we hear that a lot. We hear these, overtones of transparency and accountability. And, of course, you saw the big rant with Obama that, fundamental change and it's time for change. And, it's like people have been there, done that, heard it, what makes anybody different? You've got people that are, pardon the phrase, pissed right off in America right now. They stormed the gates in D.C. over the weekend. You saw, you see this stripping and vilification of our veterans. How have we gone so far that we're actually treating our veterans like cattle? It's just disgusting. You look around and see that 50% of Americans don't have employment. You see our troops, bringing our troops home. Give me a break. You see just about absolute steamrolling of every liberty. We just had, of course, as you know, Robin was talking about this blue Republican thing. You have this steamrolling of the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. You've got this crony corporatism. You've got people fed up to the yin-yang with what's been going on and all these executive orders. You actually, interestingly, are I'd love to get into you wanting to repeal the NDAA. That is a horror, sci-fi horror come to life. But really, you classify yourself. It's so interesting to me. I think this is correct me if I'm wrong. A constitutional conservative Democrat. Help us understand that, and then weigh in what I'm saying about when you look around your great country and what's happened in the last term. Certainly.
Well, Robin, here's how we've gotten to the point where we are right now with my candidacy. I ran in 2012 strictly to get my name out there. I am not a career politician. I am a man that's got proven leadership ability in the field of college football. I coached college football for a number of years, served in the Army National Guard, but I do have proven leadership ability. But if you think that I am dirty because I am a career politician, you need to think again, because I'm not. We've got to go in a different direction. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep on getting what we are getting. You need a president that's going to go to Washington, stand up in front of the American people, and let them know exactly what's been going on with all of these politicians. We've been sold out. We've been sold down the river as a nation. And nobody wants to stand up and actually say it. Nobody wants to say that we're bankrupt. We're almost $17 trillion in debt, and it's because we are a consumption-based nation now. All we do is buy and consume. We are not a production-based nation anymore. My plan calls for bringing back the manufacturing jobs. We've lost 4.5 million of them in the past 15 years strictly because of the North American Free Trade Agreement. As your president, I will be pushing to repeal that and any other treaty that is not in the best interest of the people of the United States and this economy. We've got to bring these jobs back. Now, that's only half the battle. The other half is to move to fair trade over free trade. What does fair trade mean? Fair trade basically means that we're going to raise the tariffs on goods that are coming into this country from foreign countries so that we can actually compete to make the same goods right here in the United States. That's what's going to bring these jobs back. My plan also calls for becoming energy independent. That's going to create another 3 million jobs, experts will tell you. You see, if you think about it, Desert Storm, 9/11, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, just 2 summers ago, Libya, when we bombed them. Just a few weeks ago, we were thinking about bombing Syria, and then, of course, Iran is on the horizon as well. The reason that we are wanting to intervene so much over there in the Middle East is because we get 25% of our oil supply right there. Well, here's the thing. I've got experts on my staff. I've got friends that are CEOs in the field of oil energy right here in the United States that assure me that within 3.5 years we could be at least 25% oil independent, which would cut off having to do bad business with these countries over in the Middle East that harbor terrorists and support terrorist activities. We got to start producing so that we can lower this debt. We've got to get serious about it. we've got elected officials right now that think that they've done something great and something good. They haven't done anything. Okay, we still got a major problem. And here's the thing, too. Our Congress, they're supposed to do two things. They're supposed to balance the budget, and they're supposed to pay the bills. As President of the United States, I am going to challenge them to do that every year or give up their paycheck until they do. At the same time, when I become President of the United States, I will be giving back half of my salary to the educational system across this country, and I'm going to challenge Congress to give up half their salary to put back in the state educational system as well. We've got to get serious about our educational system right now. Before 1977, we were in the top 5 in the world in education, and now here we are, number 22 overall in the world of education. Okay. And
you've got Common Core and all these very neo-fascist sort of progressive movements just absolutely getting fused into our children.
Well, it really is, Sheila, and we're 41st in math. Now, here's the bad thing about it. Okay, 1977, we started declining in the field of education as a nation. But in 1977, that's when the Federal Department of Education was formed. As your president, I'm going to be pushing to close down the Federal Department of Education and giving it back to the states and to the individuals. We've got to follow the 10th Amendment. I'm a big 10th Amendment guy. If it's not covered in that Constitution, let's give it back to the states. And I don't think we can...
That's a really good segue. Sorry to interrupt you, Robby, but it's been, let's face it, and you're going to hear this, and it's been said that, it's all the same puppets for the same puppeteers. The establishment gives, the okay, if you will, to candidates, and it's all sort of globally orchestrated, because right now, look around, you've got this complete globally orchestrated rogue mafia-style Stasi gone mad. And, what do you, especially a guy that, like a man knows a lot about the New World Order and Agenda 21, how does a person like you fight this technocratic oligarch? Since, you're so, you have a lot of political acumen, you've got a lot of knowledge as to what's going on. When the sense is that you'll do what you're told when you enter a position like the presidency, how do you respond to that?
How do I respond to how I'm going to do what I'm told? I'll do what I'm told, of course, and it's found in the Constitution, it's found in the Declaration of Independence, and it's found in the Bill of Rights. That's where I'm getting my instructions. You see, there's going to be two questions that I'm going to ask when I become president. Number one, is this decision constitutional? And number two, is it for the betterment of the people of the United States of America? And if the answer is yes, I'm going to proceed. But all these other cronies that are going to try to tell me what I've got to do and this, no, we're going to follow the Constitution. We're going to get back to restoring this republic. In fact, I need everybody across this country to rise up with me. So come November 2016, we can celebrate and we can author in a new chapter into our history, and it's called the Declaration of Restoration.
Robby, this is Tim Ball. I'm Sheila's co-host, and great to have you on. And I liked your answer about taking leadership, because one of the things I've been looking at over the last several years is a crisis of leadership, not just at the political level, but in industry, in universities, everywhere. There's a crisis of leadership. A lot of it, I think, related to people, and I'll give you one specific example. We needed a dean at the university I was at. We had what everybody thought, well, most people thought was the best candidate. About 3 weeks before, he just said, no, I'm not taking it. I start with 40% against me, and I wouldn't get the support, and my family and my life, it's just not worth it. And so what we've got is people with leadership potential and abilities not taking it on. So I think your answer is very, very germane. That it really is a calling. And I use that in every sense of that term. But just to respond to, and I like the idea of going back to the Constitution. Obviously, that's the best document so far in the history of the world to deal with it. But it's been said about, and I know the U.S. is not a democracy; it's a republic. But the concept of democracy is there, and it's been said that a democracy cannot survive as a permanent form of government. It can last only until its citizens discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority who vote will vote for the candidates promising the greatest benefits from the public purse, with the result that a democracy will always collapse from loose fiscal policies, always followed with a dictatorship. And it seems to me that that's the challenge for you, that Obama got elected with less than, 30% of the total vote, because only 60% turn out to vote, and only half of them, or less than half of them, vote for Obama. But how do you overcome that challenge?
Well, here's the thing, and you're exactly right. In 2012, on November the 6th, 2012, there were over 90 million Americans that could have voted that chose not to vote. And the reason they chose not to vote is because they did not have a candidate that represented them. In fact, they had one that they were two that they were pretty much totally disconnected with. Well, here's what we're doing. We're giving the United States an actual candidate come 2016. You see, here's the thing, Doc. We've got over 20 million Americans that are unemployed. Now, up in Washington, those cronies, they're going to tell you that number is a lot smaller than that, but the fact of the matter is it's over 20 million because people have fallen off and they've given up on trying to find a job. We've got over 25 million Americans that are underemployed. We've got 46 million Americans living in poverty and 149 million Americans existing on low income and relying on the federal government for some form of assistance. That's not what this country is supposed to be about. You see, 99.6% of this population is considered to be middle class and below. We make less than $1 million a year. That's where I fall. I am a middle-class citizen. I get out here every day with my small business that I own now that I've retired from coaching, and I work my business every day, so I am not in poverty. But if I didn't work my business, I would be, just like everybody else. If they didn't have that paycheck, they'd go straight into poverty. Now, here's the thing. We've had millions of people that have been unemployed and had to go through the unemployment line. You're talking to a guy that's done exactly that, too. See, I'm getting very transparent with you right now. I'm going to tell you the good about me, but I'm going to tell you the bad, too. I've had mountaintop experiences. I've had deep valleys. I've gone through struggles in my personal life. I've been divorced, okay? Anybody that coaches long enough and on the college level will tell you that you're going to end up losing your job. I've been let go from my job a couple of times. So here's the thing. I've also been on teams that have gone undefeated and won national championships and sat on top of the world. What I'm telling you is this. I think I am a great representation of what this country is all about. Like I said, I've gone through that unemployment line, just like 99.6% of the country out there that is middle class and below, feeling like their American dream has been stolen from them and replaced with an economic nightmare, wondering how I'm going to provide for my family, just like everybody else is wondering the same thing. I'm taking that stand. I'm asking this country to rise up with me.
Is it fair to say that Washington has become completely isolated, that it's gone from being the citadel on the hill to being the ivory tower, like the academic ivory towers, a complete disconnect?
Well, I would absolutely agree with you on that. You know, we need people that are going to step forward with actual structured solutions. And see, I'm not just sitting here talking about the problems. I'm going to give you some solutions tonight. You see, we've got major gun violence going on in our schools right now. The Sandy Hook tragedy, of course, last December, it absolutely broke my heart. I worked on the high school level for about 7 years. And love working with children and being able to see them grow and go on and do great things. So when I saw this tragedy, it absolutely broke my heart. So I took a pause, stepped back, and said, is there anything that I can come up with to help this country? And I have. And it's called Vets for Kids, and it's actually going to take care of a couple of problems. This plan will actually protect every child in every school across this country so that we will no longer have a Sandy Hook-type tragedy in our school system. How do you ask, are we going to do that? By taking our unemployed veterans and putting them back to work as guardians for these children in every one of these schools across the country. These veterans have already taken an oath to protect the people of the United States of America. I've been going across this country meeting with Democrat and Republican leadership, and both sides actually like it. Of course, the Democrats like it because in their mind it's a type of gun control for the liberal side. And on the Republican side or the conservatives, they really like it because they feel like it protects the Second Amendment. So, hey, here's a compromise, but at the same time, let's protect our most valuable assets. Let's protect these children, but at the same time, let's put about 500,000 veterans back to work, guys that have laid it on the line for you and for me. I've always heard that the greatest love that a man can show is that he lays his life down for his friends, and that's exactly what our veterans have done. They've laid it on the line for you and for me, Doc. Sheila, they've laid it on the line for us. So we've got to do everything in our power to help them. We've got over
What do you think when you actually see this complete vilification of our veterans, Robby? And in addition to that, when you saw in Washington the barricades, barricading these vets out, shutting down national. How does your head wrap around that kind of a move on Obama's part?
Well, it's absolutely shameful, and it absolutely hurts my heart. But you know what? We saw those barricades get moved out of the way by our World War II veterans. Okay, that probably was one of the greatest generations in the history of this country. Oh, yeah,
yes,
absolutely. And they were not going to be denied, and they were not going to be turned away. And you know what? I applaud them for it. And if I had been there, I would have been standing right there with them. We've got a Republican congressman that told this girl that was a park ranger that she should be ashamed of herself for having the barricades up. And she said, "Well, sir, I'm just following my orders. I'm not ashamed." But here's the thing: I wonder if he felt ashamed for actually putting all those people out of work for several weeks. I wonder if he feels ashamed because he's actually part of the problem instead of being part of the solution.
Incidentally, Robby, there are some examples around the world of the kind of thing you're talking about. It's not anywhere near to the degree you're talking about it, but in Canada here, for example, we have the Corps of Commissionaires, which is almost 99% retired military people, and they carry out they have a uniform, they're very well respected, and they have a civic function in exactly the kind of line that you're talking about protection, about protecting schools and children and so on. So there are some models that you could look at and adapt into the U.S. system. And, of course, having been a military person myself, I was involved in the Cuban crisis, for example, as a officer in an anti-submarine squadron, and so a lot of military people retire early, particularly by today's standards. So to provide them with something, and you see what's going on now where they're coming back from Afghanistan and being demobbed, and then there's no work for them. So this kind of, I think this could fill so many different functions, what you're proposing.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. In fact, let me just say this. My Vets for Kids program, of course, is designed for our veterans to go and protect these children in the schools. But I venture to say it could spread out where these veterans are actually serving as security for churches or for civic organizations or for sporting events, you name it. But we've got to take care of these veterans. And here's the thing. It's not so much in the cities that we have to worry about it. We've got to worry about it in small-town USA, because in small-town USA, everybody's thinking, oh, it's not going to happen here. It would never happen to us. Well, Newtown, Connecticut was small-town USA, and it happened there. But here's the neat thing about small-town USA. There are veterans in small-town USA everywhere. So my plan will take care of these veterans. We've got to take care of these guys. You know, my plan also calls for overhauling the VA. We've got good people working in the VA across this country. We just don't have enough of them. My plan calls for doubling the number of workers in the VA so they can actually hear these claims from these veterans. I've been going across the country, and I've been hearing horror stories from these veterans trying to get their claims heard. I'm talking about veterans all the way back to the Korean conflict and Vietnam. We've got to do a better job. And let me just say this, too. As President of the United States, we've got to have someone that is not going to just be so trigger-happy. You see, war is an option, but it should always be the last option. We've got to bring these troops home as quickly and safely as possible. That's not lip service for me. You see, I did serve in the Army National Guard briefly, but I was there. We've got to bring these troops home because people die in war, okay? And it does matter. Unlike what Hillary Clinton said when she said, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a lot of difference to those four families that lost their loved ones over there in Benghazi. And the same with any family that has a family member that is lost in war. So we've got to make sure, number one, that the wars that we are in are just, they are constitutional. Number two, we've got to bring these troops home as quickly and safely as possible. It was George Washington, our first president, that warned us of these foreign entanglements. He told us, he said, be friendly with all and trade with those that are friendly back, but entangle with none. So we've got to bring these troops home. My plan calls for having a military presence around the globe that is constitutional during peacetime. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution says we can have a standing Navy. If you think about our Navy and what it is, we've got our fleet, we've got our personnel, of course, but you've also got amphibious capabilities with your Marines and your Navy SEALs. And if we had to have air support, you've got your naval aviators. So quickly, we've got what we need. Let's put our Navy in the hot spots of the world. Let's bring these troops home. Let's train them real hard right here on our soil. There's two things that will deter war: a strong economy and a strong military. My plan calls for both.
So when you talk about repealing that nightmare, horrific NDAA and the Patriot Act, tell us a little more about your plan on that.
Well, that's it in a nutshell. My plan, and I am endorsed by Liberty candidates. Let me just say that. I am a Liberty candidate that is actually going to give this campaign a true chance of winning come 2016. My candidacy is all about returning the liberties and the freedom back to the people of the United States of America. How? Because I will be pushing to repeal the parts of the USA Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act that take away from every citizen's Fourth Amendment right to due process. You see, right now, the National Defense Authorization Act, the president, if he deems you an enemy of the state, he can have the feds come in. They can take you right out of your home without due process. They can hold you indefinitely, which means they could hold you forever, and your family would never see you again. Your friends, your loved ones, they'd never see you again without due process. That's got to go away. That's wrong. That's not what the United States was built on, and we've got to get back to what we are supposed to be about, which is about liberty. It is about freedom. And, here's the thing. I've been running as an independent for right at a year. I announced back in November of 2012 that I was going to seek the White House in 2016. And I've been running as an independent. But realistically speaking, I knew that I was going to have to choose one of the two parties because of the laws in every state in order to have an actual chance of giving we the people a candidate that's going to go to Washington with some teeth to actually do what he says he's going to do. So a couple of weeks ago, after we had reached out to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party on numerous occasions, the Democratic Party has been looking for a Liberty candidate. It was August 1st that Aaron Blake of the Washington Post wrote an article saying that the Democratic Party was actually in search of a Liberty candidate to run for president, but they don't have anybody in the ranks of Congress or in any high-ranking official to actually do it. Well, now they do, because I am seeking the Democratic Party nomination for President of the United States come 2016. Let me tell you guys this right now. I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to stir that pot. And we the people, if it's the good Lord's will and they see it my way, we're going to get this thing done come 2016.
Robby, that's an interesting comment, because I think it's Rush Limbaugh that's saying he sees Governor Christie running as a Democrat in the 2016 for somewhat the same lines that you're talking about.
Well, and if he does, great and good, but I'm just going to tell you guys this right now. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you exactly what I believe and what I like. I'm not going to get on here and bash any other candidates or this, that, and the other. I'm going to talk to you about my candidacy, and I'm going to talk to you about my vision for this country. You see,
I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. All I'm saying is that there are other people that have a frame of mind like you're talking about, and of course, essentially, it's crossing those that wall, almost like a Berlin Wall that's been created between the two parties. That we saw that in Washington recently.
Well, listen, we've got a strategy, okay, and because I am a Liberty candidate, the strategy is to go win the Democratic Party nomination. Once we do that and we get into the general election, we truly believe we're going to get at least 1/3 of the Republican Party with the Republican Liberty Caucus that will come over and vote for us as well, as all of the independents and third-party voters, too, because in 2012, I did run as an independent just to get my name out there. And you know what? I sought the Constitution Party's nomination in 2012, and I got a lot of practice in those debates. I knew if I had gone after one of the two major parties in 2012, I wouldn't have been able to get into any of those debates. But guess what? I did get in those debates, and I got in 10 of them. And, we're ready. Okay, we're just asking these other potential candidates to step to the plate. You see, these are drastic times. Drastic times means we've got to take drastic measures. Okay.
Well, there's been a real planned demolition of the United States by the powers that be. I mean, it seems like they can control this demolition of everything, if you will. I mean, I'd take that statement you made earlier one step further to say the middle class is almost gone completely. I mean, they've raped, pillaged, plundered, destroyed the middle class. I mean, what are your thoughts on going into something that just seems like a David and Goliath scenario here?
Well, it's funny that you say that. I am a believer, and whether the people on this call are or not. Number one, let me just back up for a second. There was this young girl many years ago, beautiful young girl, went away to college with all her hopes and dreams ahead of her, and just like most girls, she got away to school. She ended up falling in love with this older man. He just happened to be a married man. One thing led to another, and all of a sudden there was an unwanted pregnancy, and all of her friends were telling her, hey, it's just a blip on the radar. You're so talented. Don't throw away your career. Go ahead and terminate this pregnancy, to the point where they set her up an appointment, and they went to get her to take her to terminate that pregnancy. And at the last moment, this young girl said, no, says, I'm going to give this child a chance. I'm going to go ahead and give birth and put this child up for adoption. Now, I've never had the chance of meeting this lady, but if I could, I would thank her for setting my life in motion, because the lady I'm speaking of is my birth mom. Now, I tell you that story because I'm probably the most unlikely person to be on the phone with you tonight. I'm probably the most unlikely person to be running for president of the United States. But the fact of the matter is, Sheila, I'm here. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not scared. In fact, I was taught as a child to fear not. And the only thing that I do fear is being out of relationship with my God. So if I don't have the fear and I'm standing strong and I'm standing courageous, I'm just asking the people to do the same. You give me 1 million people across this country, and I know that we've probably got about 500,000 of them listening in right here tonight, but you give me 1 million people across this country that will go ahead and invest a little bit in the future of this nation in this campaign. All I need is 1 million people that will donate $5 every Friday for 2 years in a row. We will raise over $500 million, and that will be enough to win the White House.
So what do you think about this? I just want to get your thoughts on, securing our border, quote unquote. And earlier, of course, you mentioned NAFTA. I mean, look at with this amnesty bill, you've got millions of illegal immigrants. I mean, you've got a very, very slippery slope happening there. Weigh in on that, please, Robby.
Well, I don't think that the amnesty bill makes any sense. We need to throw it out. It does not protect the citizens of the United States. My plan is called Service for Freedom, and it's actually already law. I just want to take it and go ahead and expand upon it, and this is basically how it would work. Number one, we've got to quadruple our Border Patrol, and that's what my plan calls for, number one, is to quadruple our Border Patrol. And I know that there's probably some libertarians say, we don't need to do it. Yeah, well, and everybody's got an opinion. My opinion is we've got to shut down all the illegal immigrants from coming here. Once we get that accomplished, then anyone that wants to come in this country from Central or South America, we're going to let them come in. See, the problem we've got right now is the system is not set up for people coming from poverty-stricken situations to gain citizenship here because it's so expensive for them to actually do it. So they come in here illegally. My plan would be to let them actually come in this country, serve in the military for a number of years. While they're there, we will educate these people on the history of the United States, what our founding fathers had to go through, what it truly means to be an American. If they need to learn the English language, we're going to teach them that as well. And at the end of that process, they're going to come out and they're going to have gained their citizenship. The whole time that they're going through that process, they will be earning a wage. The only difference is this wage will be taxable.
Robby, one of the most threatening things, I think, in the U.S. right now, beyond the NDA and beyond the NSA, is the IRS. And it only exists, and as you know, income tax was a temporary measure to pay for the First World War, blah, blah, blah. Right. But it only, the IRS only exists because you have to make decisions about who can get claims and who can deductions and so on. Flat tax eliminates all of that and eliminates the greatest expense of Washington.
Yes, it does.
And the greatest power control. I mean, it always amused me that Al Capone, I mean, all the things that he did wrong, and the only thing they could nail him on was income tax evasion. If that doesn't show you the power of the IRS, nothing does. So where's your position on that? And then I've got another point that I'd like to raise about taxes after you finished your answer.
Sure. Let me just say this. First of all, the IRS is unconstitutional. It's been around since 1913, just like the Federal Reserve, which was put into play in 1913. Both are unconstitutional. It was a very bad year for us 100 years ago here in the United States when both of those departments were formed. So here's what I'm going to say. As President of the United States, I would like to see us move away from having federal income tax. I'd like to see us shut down the IRS. That is not going to happen overnight. But what I would like to see happen is over a period of time, as we go through this process, that we do draw down the IRS and we move to a tariff system, which is what our founding fathers put in place for us. But if we shrink the size of government and we get back to what we're really supposed to be about with our government, then a tariff system actually would work. So that's my plan in a nutshell, is to actually get rid of the IRS.
Could you also, can I throw this in there? Can you also end the Fed while you're in there, Robby, please, for me?
Well, it's funny that you say that. That's part of my plan, too. If people will actually go on my website, which is www.robbywells2016.com. That's ROBBY. WELLS2016.com. You can go through my entire platform, which is called the Game Plan. I had to keep it in the family, of course, being a coach.
I would love to see you shut down the UN. What do you think the chances of that happening are?
Let me say this. I'll get to the UN in 1 second. Let me say this about the Fed. The Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. In Article 1, Section 8, again, of the Constitution, the power of our money system is supposed to be in the hands of Congress. So I'm going to hold Congress's feet to the fire to go back and take sovereign control of our money system. So, we've got to get out of that. Now, unlike Ron Paul wanted to go back to the gold standard. I don't think that we can immediately go back to the gold standard if we ever could. Number one, we're $17 trillion in debt. If we went back to the gold standard, what's to stop China from coming in and saying, hey, give us all your gold? Because if that happens, then we're in a world of hurt, my friend.
Well, and isn't that what de Gaulle did, that brought the off the gold standard when he came and said, I got $2 billion and I want my gold for it. And, of course, it wasn't in Fort Knox. Lyndon Johnson got caught bare walls. So, I agree with you.
Well, interesting you guys are mentioning China because just today I was reading an article that China is calling for, the New World Order. They're essentially they're moving to replace U.S. as world's reserve currency. So what are your thoughts on that, Tim and Robby?
Well, Robby, go first.
Well, let me just say this, Tim. It was Daddy Bush in 1991 when he addressed Congress and he talked about the New World Order. He was talking about Agenda 21, going to this one world government. Well, here's the thing. They've tried to sell the people across this country that we would actually be in charge, the United States of America. That's not true. Yeah. That is not true. That is not true at all. The whole thing with Agenda 21, it is not a conspiracy theory. You can actually go on the UN website and look up Agenda 21 and read all about it. Okay, yep. and how they want to strip away our sovereignty as a nation, how they want to come in and how they want to disarm our American citizens. And if you think about it now, why would anybody in America ever want to give up their guns or give up their weapons? Because, if you think back to Pearl Harbor, that was a devastating blow on that day when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. But the reason they did not go ahead and invade on the West Coast and come on forward is because they knew that behind every blade of grass there would be a gun pointing right back at them.
Yep, I would agree with that. Can I flip back to the taxes thing for a minute?
Sure.
One of the things that Sheila and I talked about before, but I've been kicking around for years, and I know it's essentially true in the U.S. and Britain, but in Canada, if you were to sit down and write a single check for each level of government each year, you would write about 34% for federal government in Canada, about 18% for province, which is equivalent to the state taxes, and then 9% for municipal. And yet, the municipality gives you more services, provides more for your daily life than any of the other three. And it seems to me that we need to turn that over and invert that financial pyramid and reduce the size of the federal government, which really the only function of it should be for defense. Got a comment, Robby, on that?
Well, and I completely agree with you. I'm probably going to be the only candidate that is going to agree with you completely on that.
Okay.
But
one of the things, we've got, of course, a lot of people in our chat room, and we've got a lot of different people asking questions. And, I mean, here's the problem people are having is that, and I guess weigh in on this. I mean, we'll just throw this out there. I mean, a lot of people say the right things. I mean, it's really hard for, people sound like politicians, right? I mean, they say all the right things. And then to couple that, you've got this, let's face it, you're talking Agenda 21 and New World Order. I mean, you've also got these clandestine globalists. I mean, how does somebody maneuver around the fact that it seems in history, anybody that ever challenged these, technocratic oligarchs, the who's who, the people wielding the reins of power, how does a man go up against a system that's, let's face it, it's kind of globally maneuvered, manipulated, orchestrated, whatever you want to call it? How does a person get around that, Robby? How does a guy, a football coach with, great liberty values, who's a big defender of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, all that stuff, how do you go up against this clandestine oligarch?
Well, let me just say this. It goes back to when you were in elementary and middle school. We all knew of a bully. But the thing about a bully is when you stand up to them, they usually run away. And see, that's what's happened here in the United States. We've been bullied. The people of this country have been bullied. They've been bullied by a select few people, the people on K Street, which is the same people that control the war industrial complex. It's the same select few. Well, it's time for we the people to stand up, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm not going to shut up. Okay, I'm not going to be some candidate that's going to get bought off either. See, here's the thing. I'll go ahead. The reason these candidates get bought off is because they've got dirty laundry. They don't want to get out there. Well, guess what? Okay, I'm not a perfect person. I've got my dirty laundry just like anybody else, and I'll sit here and I'll talk to you. In fact, I've already talked to you, telling you about some things. I've had financial struggles just like everybody else. In fact, I probably should have been bankrupt once before, okay, because, especially in the downturn of the economy, how did anybody make it, really, if you think about it? So here's the thing. They can come at me with whatever they want. One thing I'm going to tell you is this. I'm always going to be transparent. I don't care what they try to throw out there. If it's the truth, I'm going to go, yeah, they're right, or whatever. You know, but here's what we've got to do to get this country moving back in the right direction. And I think that's what really scares them when it comes to me, because they know that I can't be bought.
Robby, there's an interesting, it came from, ironically, from Jimmy Carter, but in one of his books he talked about the fact that you get some briefings if you're a candidate for the presidency about what's going on in the world, but in the week after you become president, you are then given all of the secrets of what's going on around the world. And he basically said, if you don't do something about those things at that time, you're essentially buying into them. You're locked into it. And how would you deal with that? Because, of course, we see with this what Snowden's done and the mixed opinions about what he did. Some people saying he was a traitor, but on the other hand, he was showing the clandestine control of information and misuse of the information. So it seems that that's one of the great challenges is how do you disclose what's going on, have full transparency without causing harm?
Well, and I understand your question. Let me just say this about Jimmy Carter. Number one, he was a family friend.
Right.
He's the reason that all this really got set into motion for me back when I was 8 years old. My father, that the family that adopted me, my father was a Baptist minister, but he also served for Jimmy Carter when he was the governor of Georgia. He served on a committee that oversaw the special needs kids there in the state of Georgia because my sister was special needs. So I saw Jimmy Carter go from being a peanut farmer to being the governor to being the president. And it really just stuck with me when I was 8 years old, and he became the president of the United States back in 1976. That, you know what, one day I'm going to do that. But he's exactly right when he says, you know, you're going to get briefed. In fact, it was Barack Obama, his first day after he was elected back in 2008, November of 2008, that he was briefed. And they say he came out looking like he had seen a ghost.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, let me ask you a question. I mean, any presidential hopeful, I mean, we've got to address this troops issue. I mean, you've got 40 military bases that surround Iran alone. You've got troops in South Korea. You've got troops in the Middle East. I mean, what would be your plan in terms of our military? Again, I think you see military presence around the globe, but what are your thoughts on that? Weigh in on that, Robby.
Well, Sheila, let me just say this. We do have troops all over the globe. We've got a modern-day empire. I love studying history because history has a tendency of repeating itself. Empires have one thing in common. In the end, they always fall. We've got to reel our troops back in as quickly and safely as possible from around the globe. You brought up a good point. We've got over 40 military bases that surround the country of Iran, and they don't like us very much. But imagine if they had over 40 military bases surrounding the United States. We wouldn't like them very much either. So we've got to bring these troops home. We've got to shut down these military bases that are on foreign soil as quickly and as safely as we possibly can. Now, I understand that in certain parts of the globe, that's going to be quicker than others, such as South Korea. Realistically speaking, we're not getting out of South Korea anytime soon. I wish that we could, but we're not. That's just the nature of the beast and where we are. We didn't get where we are overnight, Sheila, but what I will tell you is this. We can set things in motion to straighten this mess out. If a patient goes to a doctor and has a huge tumor on the back, they ask the doctor, can you remove this tumor? The doctor says, sure. Well, if the doctor pulls out a knife and just whacks that tumor off, that patient's probably going to bleed to death. What that doctor has to do is surgically remove that tumor and meticulously cut away that tumor from the body. And as he comes to blood vessels, he has to tie them off so that that patient does not bleed to death. That's basically what we've got to do to get the country back in line with what our founding fathers set in motion for us.
I think that's a very, very important point because one of the fundamental flaws in the thinking is that we've got all these problems and that somebody can come in and fix them overnight. And the difficulty is, of course, that and I think Obama part of what has exposed him is the fact that he had to introduce a completely new agenda in such a quick time that even people that weren't really paying attention saw what was going on. And you saw by the election of 2010 how quickly they saw the dangers. So I think if you go in with a strategy of saying, look, it took us 20, 30 years to get into this mess, and it's going to take us at least 10 or 15 to get a handle on it, I think that would be very comforting and realistic for the people, and I think that's essential, because they've already seen hope and change and what a damage that has done to them.
Well, you're exactly right, and here's the thing. We have gotten a lot of change in the past 5 years. I just don't think it's changed so much in the right direction. And again, President Obama is not my competitor in 2016.
Right.
So, I would like to keep this towards my potential competitors. See, here's the thing. Like I said earlier, these are drastic times, and drastic times means we've got to take drastic measures. That is why I am running 4 years out, so people actually get to know about me. You see, I truly believe I've got the best platform out there. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be running for president. If I didn't think I was prepared, I'd step aside and let somebody else that was. But I truly believe that I've got that plan. Now, here's the thing. All these other ones that are up there in Washington that are contemplating a run, I want them to understand something. I want them to listen very clear to what I've got to say. I am running for president of the United States right now. So whenever you decide you want to get into this race, you make sure that you get ready for a lesson in Constitution 101, because I'm going to be taking you to school.
So I actually wanted to ask you a quick question. I mean, you were able to listen in a little bit on our earlier guest, of course, the brilliant writer for the Huffington Post. What do you think of his blue Republican ideology? I was just curious about that.
Well, Robin's got some great points. Let me just say this right now. I wish that we could get to the point where we drop all the labels, okay, whether it be Republican or Democrat. Let's just worry about being an American and doing what is in the best interest of this country. He does. He's got some really, really good points. I am running as a Democrat for the Democratic nomination in 2016, but the only reason I'm doing it is because it's the only way to actually give this campaign a chance to win. The Republican Party, the old GOP heads and the neocons, they're going to do everything in their power to keep a Liberty candidate from gaining that nomination. You saw that in 2012 when they did everything in their power, and in fact playing dirty shenanigans with Dr. Ron Paul. So why would I think that they would treat me any different? That's why.
So is it fair to say the GOP didn't want Ron Paul because strategically it's almost like they subverted the efforts? Wouldn't you agree?
I completely agree, and because of that, we looked at all sorts of data. When I say we, I'm talking about my advisors and my campaign manager and, of course, myself. But we looked at all sorts of data with the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and really it just came back to the fact that we knew that we were going to have to go with one of the two major parties to truly have a chance to win the White House come 2016. And the simple fact of the matter is the Democratic Party welcomed us with open arms because they want somebody that's going to stand up for the liberties and the freedom of the people of the United States. And, here's the thing. The Republican Party at times, perception, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, people's perception of you is their reality of you. And the perception of the Republican Party right now is they are an exclusive party and they're not for all people. Well, I've always been for everybody, and I've always been a bridge builder. In fact, if you look at my career, my last coaching job, where I was the head football coach at Savannah State University. Savannah State is a historically black college, and I'm a white guy. I was the very first white guy to ever do that. And, of course, we had a lot of success, being the most successful coach there in almost 2 decades. So, what I'm telling you is that there's all sorts of things that went into this decision of me running and seeking the nomination of the Democratic Party. Is either party perfect? No. Am I perfect as a candidate? No. But I'm going to tell you this right now. I will passionately defend the Constitution of the United States of America, and I will passionately defend every citizen in this country to protect them day in and day out, every day that I get a chance to serve as President of the United States.
Robbie, can I suggest an analogy here? One of the things that, again, as being a student of history and human conditions and human structures and so on,
sure.
George Bernard Shaw once said that Christianity is the greatest thing in the world. It's just a pity nobody ever tried it. And there's an awful lot of truth in that. And one of the things that it seems to me is that people confuse Christianity with the church. And an idea needs a structure to be disseminated. And, of course, the idea of Christianity then had the church, and very quickly the church became more important than the idea, and you had the Lutheran Revolution. What I am hearing from you is a very similar revolution in terms of going back to the original Constitution, not because you want to go back in time, but because those ideas are still valid, that they are universal truths that are timeless. And so what I see is almost a Lutheran revolution against the structure, because when you talk when you say, well, I'm running as a Democrat because that's the way the structure's set up, that shows how it's impinged upon an idea of freedom.
Well, you're exactly right, and I appreciate you bringing that out. You know, I truly believe that we are on the verge of a great awakening in this country, with all of we the people standing up and saying, you know what, enough is enough. Here's a guy that's standing up for us, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just standing up for the people. This is not about me. This is not about Robby Wells. This is about you, Doc. This is about you, Sheila. This is about all the listeners that are listening in and their family and their friends. I'm literally standing up for everybody across this country right now. And let me just say this right now, too, because you brought up Christianity. Let me just say this. I am not, I repeat, I am not a religious person. And here's why I'm not a religious person, because I do not believe that Christianity is a religion. I believe that it's a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle that I live. You see, here's the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is this is not about black America, and it's not about white America. It's not about Asian America or Hispanic America. This is about the United States of America. This is not about conservative America or liberal America. Once again, this is about the United States of America. You see, we all pledge allegiance to that same flag, saying one nation under God. We all have those same Federal Reserve notes in our wallet that says, in God we trust. We don't know how much longer they're going to be any good, but the fact of the matter is there is a God. In my mind, there is. And he's
Robby, let me just ask you to hold right there, because that is actually a really good segue into a couple other things. It's the top of the hour. I'm just going to jump on a quick break because we've got to pay some bills, but I do want you to continue that discussion when we come back.
Sure thing.
Hello again, Freedomist Proof is here, and I want to talk to you about a brand new soda maker called SodaStream. Now, the Proof House has had SodaStream for about a year, and we love the thing. We use it quite often. With SodaStream, you can have fresh-made soda in seconds. One of the big things we like about it is that there's no high-fructose corn syrup and no aspartame. There's over 60 flavors, or you can create your own. Not just sodas, they also have iced teas and energy drinks. Here at the Proof House, we make egg cream sodas all the time. Some other facts to consider here: there's no electricity, no more wasted bottles and cans, and the most important thing is that it tastes great. Keep in mind, too, this is a perfect family present for Christmas, or, hey, just surprise the family with something great. Also, for a limited time, there's free shipping, so go to freedomizerradio.com and look for the SodaStream link, and I hope you check out the product. That's SodaStream right on freedomizerradio.com.
Vaccines are required for students, employees, immigrants, military members, and international travel. Do you know how to legally avoid them? This is vaccine rights attorney and Freedomizer radio host Alan Phillips. My vaccine exemption ebook can help you avoid the mistakes that have cost others their exemption rights. Get the authoritative guide to vaccine legal exemptions, an ebook available at freedomizerradio.com and vaccinerights.com.
Let freedom ring throughout the land.
Well, welcome back to the Weekend Vigilante. It is the top of the hour, and I'd like to actually welcome, I'm going to jump in both guests here, Robby and Robin. Interesting, you both got the R-O-B in your names. I don't know if that's any correlation, but anyway, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you very much, Robby, for telling everybody about your platform, a little bit about yourself. Certainly you've got some incredible ideas. You've got some big ideas, and of course, I can't help but think of the David and Goliath scenario there too. But first of all, weigh in on so far what you've heard, Robin.
Hey, Robby, thank you for what you're doing there.
Hey, well, thank you, Robin, and thank you for all you're doing as well.
Appreciate it. So I'm fascinated by something you said. By your decision to run Democratic. Now, you said that the Democratic Party welcomed you with open arms, and I want to know who these Democrats are that are running this party who welcomed you with open arms. Because as everybody can see right now, the overt liberty movement seems to have a much bigger foothold in the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. So can you shed some light on what you know, kind of a little bit from the inside, is happening vis-a-vis liberty inside the Democratic Party? Because that's something I need to know about for what I do, because Blue Republican is about putting principle before party, and we will be endorsing candidates across the range of parties if we can find them and they have the right principles.
And Robin, I appreciate that question. Let me just say this. I truly believe that we're on the verge of a paradigm shift with the Democrat and Republican parties. We've reached out to a lot of Democrats. They've reached out back to us with open arms.
Who are they? Who are they, Robby? That's my question.
With specifics, here in Charlotte, North Carolina, Charlotte is a heavily Democratic town. There has been a lot of people within the Democratic Party here that has reached out to us, as well as up in Virginia. We're going out to California this week. And we're going to be out in Southern California meeting with a lot of heavy-hitter Democrats as well. And, they're looking forward for us to get out there, and we're looking forward to get out there with them. Here's the thing. They're not going to agree with me on everything, okay? But I think that we can be agreeable to disagree at times on some of the issues. But the fact of the matter is, I truly believe I've got the best plan to get this country moving back in the right direction. We've got an economic plan. In fact, we're going to unveil it here, Robin, in about 2 weeks, and it's called Eaglenomics. And the reason we call it Eaglenomics is because it has some left-wing and some right-wing stuff in it. I mean, it's not just one. Because here's the thing, you always hear about left-wing and right-wing. I've never seen a bird fly with just one wing anyway, okay? If you just had one wing, that bird's just going to flap around. That's been a major problem with our country anyway. Maybe it's time to elect a president that's not left-wing and he's not right-wing. He's that bird that sits in the middle, and he's going to pull both those wings to him so that this eagle can soar all the way to Washington in 2016.
Robby, I gather from your question you're looking for specific names, to read a little bit between the lines, what you're saying is that your experience is there's an awful lot of people, particularly amongst the Democrats, who say, oh, yeah, come on in, but it's simply to distract you and divert you and control you rather than a genuine willingness to listen to your ideas and help you with your ideas. Is that a fair assessment of your questioning?
Oh, no, I personally haven't been on the receiving end of any shenanigans by the Democratic Party to subvert anything I'm doing. So I'll just be clear about that. No, I'm just interested who it is that if you like, has the decision-making position to facilitate a run by Robby and people like him, and yet, on the other hand, seem to have made no difference to the Democratic Party in the direction of liberty on the national stage. I wasn't particularly needing names. I was just kind of interested in positions and their situation context within the party.
Let me just say this, Robin. I've had the opportunity to meet with the state chairman of the Democratic Party right here in North Carolina on a couple of occasions. Okay. And of course, Randy Voller, the state chairman, he cannot endorse me or anyone, but he has been very open to me actually running, and of course my local chair, which is right here in Charlotte, the Charlotte Mecklenburg chair, Robin Bradford, and many others, Michael Lawson, which is a big time Democrat right here in the Charlotte area, in the southern part of North Carolina. So we've been reaching out. We're going to go over to California. I'm flying out at about 4:30 tomorrow morning, heading over to the West Coast. I'll be over there for 4 days, and we're going to be meeting with a lot of the Democratic Party over there, as well as I'm going to be having lunch on Saturday with the Prime Minister and First Lady of Belize, and a lot of neat people are going to be there with that. Jermaine Jackson, which is, of course, Michael Jackson's brother, is going to be there. I'm going to have a chance to meet with him and Larry King and a lot of other dignitaries, and Representative Issa is going to be there, as well as several other representatives there. The former governor of California is going to be there as well. So, we're making the rounds, and we're going to go see these people. One thing is for sure, I'm going to get in front of the people, because I've always been taught as a coach, you've got to tell people what you want in order to get what you want, and you got to help people get you got to help enough people in this country get what they want in order for you to get what you want. Well, what do I want? I want to be the President of the United States and lead this country back to economic greatness, to restore this republic what it's supposed to be. So, that's one thing I love about this show tonight, Sheila, is the simple fact you guys are giving me the opportunity to come on and speak to these people across the country.
What's the biggest... go ahead. Go ahead, Robin.
I was just going to say, Robbie, nothing would actually give me more pleasure than to be able to have the Blue Republican movement endorse a Liberty candidate on the Democratic ticket and the Liberty candidate on the Republican ticket. That would be fantastic. And by the way, the North Carolina chapter of Blue Republican was one of the very first to be established. And the guy who runs it was actually ran a blog before the Blue Republican thing was even started, called Progressives for Ron Paul. I think he's definitely a Democrat, he's definitely not a Republican, and which makes him an interesting chapter leader for us, because he's the only one right now that I can say that of. And I would be very happy for you two guys to get in touch. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much, Robin.
Well, I think it's fair to say we all want less intrusive government. I mean, when you look around and, you see what's happening. I mean, what's the most resounding thing you get from the people? I mean, Robbie, you've been out there talking and, getting a feel, you're getting a thumb on the pulse of the people of America. What seems to be the biggest alarm bell, the resounding cri de coeur, if you want, to the people?
Well, and it's funny that you ask that, because everywhere I go, I always ask, what's your top concern? What do you want to see happen in this country? Help me to understand what your major concerns are. And literally thousands of people that I've talked to across this country, they're all saying the same thing. We need jobs, okay? they want jobs, which is why my platform calls for bringing all these jobs and putting people back to work. We start putting people back to work and we start producing again, that's what's truly going to eliminate this $17 trillion debt, or at least get it back under control.
How do you start the manufacturing steamrolling here again? Because, look, at every American can agree that, for that matter, North American can agree. We look in our closets, everything we have is made in China. And then you look at this U.S. currency thing. How do you bring that back to America, Robbie?
Well, once again, Sheila, it's a two-part plan that I have. The first part is to push to repeal the North American Free Trade Agreement and any other treaty with these other countries that's not in the best interest of our economy and the United States workers. The second thing is to move to fair trade over free trade. Fair trade meaning that we raise the tariffs on the goods that are coming into this country from other countries to the point where that tariff is raised where we can actually compete to make the same products here. That's what's going to bring these manufacturing jobs back. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to bring these jobs back here. And at the same time, these companies that are overseas now that were here once, we've got to give them tax incentives to come back here as well. We've got to entice them. Now that they're gone, we've got to bring them back.
It's a funny place it's a funny place to jump in, but a lot of our listeners, another common question seems to be your take on this, Gestapo, Stasi, draconian police state we have in America. What's your comments on that?
Well, we've gone down this slippery slope since 9/11 with the Department of Homeland Security, and it all started, of course, with the USA Patriot Act, and we've continued to go down this slippery slope. As President of the United States, again, we didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take some time to shut down the Department of Homeland Security and give this back to the actual states. But that's what we've got to do, because what people are talking about is exactly correct. I mean, we're going down the path of the KGB right now. So
it's pretty bad when you're, I think it's a pretty sad state in America when I'm starting to agree more with Vladimir Putin than I am the administration in America. I think that's a pretty, that's an eye-opener to me. But you're talking about some big things. I mean, shutting down the IRS, DHS, repealing the NAFTA, repealing NDAA and the Patriot Act. These are some heavy things to try to take on. I mean, what are your thoughts on the I mean, I don't think people really understand the gravity of what's going on in America right now, Robby.
Well, you got to have somebody that's thick-skinned with the backbone to go to Washington, someone that's going to say, hey, look, I am the president. You guys say that this is the way things are going, but you got a new sheriff in town now. This is what we're going to start working towards. So that's why you need somebody like me that's not a career politician, that has not been bought. That's why I am asking for a million people across this country to invest in this campaign, just $5 every Friday. Because if you do that, then here's the thing. I haven't been bought by anybody. I haven't been bought by any corporation, per se, by doing that. But if we can get 1 million people, which is 1/3 of 1% of our population, 1/3 of 1% of our population can change this world. Because if we change this country, and I know, we change this world.
Right.
Well, one of the things that's been going on, of course, is energy independence, but it's been done more on a geopolitical purpose rather than an economic purpose. And if you can start producing your own energy at a much lower cost, which can be done, I mean, when you look at the subsidies to alternate energies, which simply don't work, then that makes you much more competitive. And, of course, I think corporate taxes now for the U.S. are the highest, amongst the highest in the developed world. So just a few simple changes that could make U.S. business and manufacturing sector much more competitive. And I also understand that one of the trends that's going on that needs to be encouraged is that the Chinese workers are now becoming consumers and therefore want more money to buy the goods, and therefore they're looking for higher wages, and you see unrest amongst the workers over there. And it's at the point now where it's cheaper to manufacture a product in the U.S. than in China. So there are some signs of what could happen and what could be done.
Well, and I completely agree. And, Sheila, you did bring up a good point a second ago. If everybody listening in on this call tonight will just go look in their closet and look in the back of each one of your shirts or your jackets, you'll see that nothing's made in America anymore. So we've got to bring, and, this is very personal to me, because when I was in high school, I was in Graniteville, South Carolina, and Graniteville was a mill village. And the mills there, it was textile mills. They made the denim for your blue jeans. And literally thousands of people were employed in the Graniteville and Swint mills right there in Graniteville, South Carolina. Well, because of NAFTA about 15 years ago, these mills shut down, and they all went down south of the border. You're talking about thousands of people right there that became unemployed just in this one city. And that's just one example. We can go all the way across this country. But, I saw a lot of my friends lose their jobs because of that. I saw people become homeless. I saw the divorce rate go through the roof. I saw the suicide rate go through the roof right there in that little town, simply because people were just basically thrown away like they were trash. We've got a job of taking care of the people of this country. which is what I want to do. I want to have the chance and the opportunity to go do some good things to take care of the people of this country.
Is it an interesting thing to think about that you had the Civil War and, of course, the North and the South, but it seems like a rigidity of political thinking and so on and has gone on in the North. What I'm hearing from the comments you guys are making is there's a lot more innovative and advanced thinking going on across the South. But, of course, the idea is out there that, Southerners are stupid and they speak funny and they're not very bright. I saw that amongst farmers, the attitude about farmers, they're very conservative and they don't adjust. My working with farmers showed me they were the biggest risk takers in the land, because every time they put a crop in, it's a huge risk. So it seems that there's cycles going on here in terms of where the potential for maintaining the U.S. as it was originally set up under the Constitution is across the South.
Very good point.
So lead on. Yeah.
Well, I live here in the South. I would like to get the votes up north and out in the Midwest and on the West Coast as well. So yeah. I truly believe that we've got some brilliant people here in the United States, and we've got to have some of these people step forward. And it doesn't have to be some big name. In fact, some of the most brilliant people are people that you probably never even heard of. My chief economist, and we're going to be unveiling this plan, this economic plan called Economics very soon. But my chief economist is not one of these guys. It's not Bernanke or any one of these guys like that. It's probably a guy you never heard of, but I'm talking about a guy with a lot of common sense that's got an economics degree and a degree in engineering as well. And he's put a lot of this stuff to practice in the businesses that he owns here in America. Just so happens he lives in the South right now, but he's from the West Coast. So, I think that we've got some brilliant people all over if you start looking around.
Well, hopefully the day of your inaugural, you won't have signed already 2 executive orders. Hey, Robby.
Well, let me say this: I will be a working president on my first day in office. This is one thing I have vowed to do on my very first day. We've got a young man. His name is Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. He is our only prisoner of war right now. He's being held in Afghanistan by Taliban insurgents. He's been held since June 30th of 2009. Our current administration has not been able to go get him. I have vowed to Bo, to his family, to the military, to our veterans, which is over 30 million strong, by the way, and to the people of the United States, that if our current administration is unable to get Bo Bergdahl home, by the time I become president on my very first day, January 20th, 2017, I will be taking steps on that first day to bring Bo Bergdahl home, because, you see, when I talk about restoring the liberties and the freedom to the people of the United States, that includes everyone, including Bo Bergdahl.
I hope that on your first day you can take that big filing cabinet of Obamacare and throw it right off the top of the Statue of Liberty.
Well, you know what, Sheila, and that's going to be a whole nother subject, and I hope you guys will call me back, and I'm going to talk to you about the Affordable Care Act. Let me just say this. I would like to see every American have the opportunity to have health care, because if an American has a catastrophic injury and they don't have health care, they're going to go bankrupt. Or if they are diagnosed with cancer or whatever, they don't have health care insurance, they're going to go bankrupt. There are some major problems with the Affordable Care Act that the Republicans have been screaming about. The only problem with the Republicans is they're not really giving a plan to fix it. Now, I've actually got a plan, and we could go in depth on this at another time, but I've actually got a plan that would probably fix the problem with the Affordable Care Act.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what it isn't right now is it's not affordable at all. I've seen people's premiums as high as triple. I mean, it's just staggering what this so-called Affordable Care Act. It's a joke to me. But I mean, I really think that it's essential. I mean, is it fair to say you're really, I guess, for the people? I mean, you're really maybe the people's choice here. Is that fair, Robby?
I am for the people. That's the only reason that I am running. This is not about me. I'd much rather, if it was just about me, just go out here and try to make some money and live a happy life. But the fact of the matter is, I'm a middle-class citizen. I've got a small business right here in Charlotte. I've been able to help about 10 people gain employment because of my business, and I'm trying to do that. And then on top of that, I'm running for president of the United States as well, which means I have to step away from my business and go campaign. So that's why I need people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I want to flip that because it really blew me away. You said about that prisoner of war in Afghanistan. Didn't Kerry just meet with Karzai, the Prime Minister of Afghanistan, and negotiate a deal with him? And we're giving the United States. The United States is giving huge amounts of money to the government of Afghanistan, and yet that they're able to hold that prisoner of war like that. I mean, that's incredible.
It really is sad. And then we've got Senators McCain and Senators Graham, which is, of course, Senator McCain, of course, was the Republican nominee in 2008, and Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. They both want to aid and arm Al-Qaeda and the Taliban right there in Syria to go up against to go up against the regime, the Syrian regime. Now, here's the problem with that. Okay, number one, you've got Al-Qaeda right there, and then now you've got Taliban coming in from Pakistan and Afghanistan to help Al-Qaeda in Syria to go against the regime. And we're wanting to aid these people. These are the same people that have been our enemies for 12 years. These are the same people that are holding Bo Bergdahl as a prisoner of war, and yet we've got senators wanting to arm the enemy. I've got to ask, what side is Senators McCain and Senator Graham on?
Well, it's a very good question because if you remember, it was the U.S. government that was funding the Taliban against the Russian invasions.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Right, in Afghanistan, right?
That's correct.
So that's
and then look at on top of all this, what is your thoughts on the fact that you've got Feinstein and others, the gun grab happening? I mean, in a country where you just talked about the blade of grass scenario. I mean, what is your thoughts on that, Robby?
Well, again, I don't want anybody thinking that I am a member of the NRA. First of all, I'm not really a member of anything. I'm an American citizen. I don't think I've got to prove my membership with anything to show people what I truly believe. Now, if somebody wants to go be a member themselves, that's fine, that's good. As far as me, I'm not a member, okay? I believe in what the Constitution says. Everybody's got the right to bear arms, and it shall not be infringed upon. That's everybody's Second Amendment right there. Senator Feinstein.
Okay, but again, when you see Feinstein trying to quash the Constitution, essentially, this Second Amendment, other amendments too. I mean, you must just shake your head.
Well, I do shake my head, and again, it all goes back to this New World Order. It goes back to Agenda 21 of trying to disarm the American people, to take away our sovereignty as a nation. So that's why we've got to stand up, and we've got to say, if you try to take away from any one of our rights, you could actually end up taking away all of our rights, which is why I do fight against the National Defense Authorization Act, which is why I fight against the USA Patriot Act, which is why, I'm sure I would be fighting against Senator Feinstein and anybody else that wants to sit on that side of the fence. We've just got to use some common sense. And the simple fact of the matter is, all this gun violence that we've seen across this country, most of it has one thing in common. It's happening in no-weapon zones. And no-weapon zones are great and good for law-abiding citizens like everybody that's probably on this call tonight. The only problem is there are some psychopaths out there, and a no-weapon zone is nothing more than an open target field for them. And here's my point.
I agree, yeah.
Here's my point. Adam Lanza up in Newtown, Connecticut, or Aaron Alexis in Washington, D.C. just 3.5 weeks ago. They went into no-weapon zones. They didn't go into a police department and try to shoot it up. They were smart enough not to do that, okay, because they knew they wouldn't be able to get very far. Now, here's the thing. President Clinton in 1993 put forward policy to disarm our military personnel on United States military installations. And since 1993, we have had 16 major shootings here in the United States. Before 1993, we had 0. That's another thing. As President of the United States, I'm going to be pushing to, I'm going to turn that around very quickly and allow our military personnel who have been trained to use weapons to actually have the capability of carrying those weapons. We don't need to have any more situations like that.
Well, I really appreciate that comment because I think that's a very fair assessment. I mean, they're definitely, you can see this absolute gun grab also infused into these what seems like at times false flags to do this very thing is, look at the criminals with guns. I mean, the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, you get these people like Feinstein and Pelosi and Harry Reid and all these people doing this gun grab, and I think it's absolutely atrocious that these elected leaders are trashing the Constitution. It just absolutely mind boggles us.
Well, and myself as well, but at the same time, it's happened so much now, it would be more mind-boggling if they didn't.
Well, gradualism certainly has been a factor in all of this because I think it's the old frog in the boiling water. I mean, gradually you see more overtones of the dehumanization, overtones of Big Brother and people getting, this government has been an out-of-control, gluttonous behemoth that is gobbling up every one of the rights. But not only that, it's exerting full-spectrum domination. Look at the TSA and the molestation that goes on there, if you don't believe me.
Oh, I completely agree, and let's get back to the TSA in just a second. But let me just say this. I don't know how much time we've got left, but as President of the United States, come 2016, good Lord willing, I'm elected, there's another problem that we've got to deal with, and that's giving away all this money in foreign aid, all these taxpayer dollars. Over $50 billion a year that's being given away in foreign aid. And yet we've got 46 million Americans living in poverty. We've got 800,000 veterans every day that are homeless here in the United States. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's over 23 veterans every day that commit suicide in the United States. Okay? Yeah. Veterans and active military personnel. Okay? So what we need to do is take care of our own backyard before we start worrying about anybody else's backyard. I'm going to keep that money right here. As president, I'm going to go ahead and direct them. Keep that money right here. Imagine if we had $50 billion that we could split up over 50 states, and every state every year got an extra $1 billion that they could use in their economy to help with infrastructure, help with creating jobs, so forth and so on. We could put a lot of people back to work.
Robby, here's a line that you can use on foreign aid, and it's not mine. It's been around for some time, but somebody once defined foreign aid is when you take the money from the poor people of the rich country and give it to the rich people of the poor country.
That's exactly right. That's what's been going on. So, we've got to change our way of thinking. And
we're out of time, fellas. But I do want to say, Robin and Robby, I appreciate you guys both coming on and weighing in on all this. And it's certainly, Robby, it is nice to. It's absolutely refreshing to hear this kind of a platform, especially somebody who's saying "we the people." That's certainly something we haven't heard for a long, long time. And again, a Thomas Jefferson quote is when the people fear the government, there is tyranny, but when the government fears the people, there is liberty. And I think liberty being the key word here, it's the key sort of thread that loops us all in on this show. And again, I want you both, Robby, first of all, plug your website for people one more time, please, and how they can get involved in the campaign.
Sheila, my campaign website is www.robbywells2016.com. You can follow me on Twitter at @electRobbyWells, and then, of course, the Facebook page is Robby Wells for President. So go on there and like that and see everything that we're doing across this country. Let me just say this real quick. It was Martin Luther King that said he dreamed of a day when a man would not be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. I truly believe that we are in a time where we've got to stop judging each other for all these petty differences, and we've got to lay them aside. We've got to start working together. And that's why I'm asking everybody across this country to rise up with me. So come 2016, we can author in that new document called the Declaration of Restoration. May God bless you.
Nice. Well, yeah, God bless you, Robby, in your pursuits, and I thank you. And I would like you to invite you back on at a later date. And also, Robin, I'd like you to plug your website for people too, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, bluerepublican.org, bluerepublican.org. There's a lot of posting there on the Blue Republican Facebook group, and that's, just type Blue Republican into the Facebook search box. And you can find all my articles too on the Huffington Post just by searching my name, Robin Kern.
Well, and very good articles they are. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that you are a brilliant writer, and we certainly really appreciate the fact that both of you are standing up for liberty in this nation. I mean, like Tim said, this is the first. Well, I mean, you put it best. I mean, this is. I truly believe that this is. America is still the greatest country in the world, and it was the very first country that ever really pounded in that free speech. I mean, there's a lot of things that is very, very key about America that's just breaking my heart to see how it's sort of globally orchestrated, and there's a demolition going on of everything, and it's staggering to people. And I think there's a sadness across America that it's got this far off track. And so anyway, I just want to thank you guys very much for coming on the Weekend Vigilante. I want to remind our listeners to catch us every Thursday from 3 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Tim and I will wrap up the program. But just as a final note, Robin and Robby, we've got about 4 minutes with you guys on as guests. Do you want to throw anything out there?
Go ahead, Robin.
Oh, goodness. To say anything I want. Well, I don't know. I guess I just want people who are in the liberty movement, who are part of this fight. It's really important that we don't kind of turn into our enemies, right? We have to keep an open mind, keep looking for the common ground, keep that sense of openness to others who maybe don't understand everything that we understand or think we understand, and be humble. Realize that just because we found liberty doesn't mean we know everything. We're not right about anything. I see a lot of my liberty friends make factual errors and other kinds of errors, and we just need to, the humility is really important to enabling other people to come to look at us and say, yeah, this guy's got something to say to me. I should listen to this person. So seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. That's my takeaway.
Fantastic comments, Robby.
Yeah.
And how about you, Robby? You've got about a 2-minute wrap-up. What would you like to say to all our listeners?
I would just like to say that to all the people across this country, to my fellow Americans, these are trying times, and we need some serious people to step forward. And if you believe in what we've been talking about tonight, that it's time to take this country back, that it's time to rise up as we the people, then please go on my website, www.robbywells2016.com. You can do a couple of things there. You can actually volunteer to be a part of this campaign back there in your state. We've got people in 45 states right now working on this campaign. If you would like to donate, you can actually, from the campaign website, go to our secure donation site and donate to this campaign. We're not asking for anybody to go broke in this crazy economy that we live, but we are asking you on Fridays, which is what we call $5 Fridays, which will be tomorrow, for everybody just to give up their Starbucks coffee, which usually costs around $5. So if you can do more, great and good. But together we can do this thing. If we come together as a people, we can accomplish anything that we want to accomplish. Why? Because this is the United States of America. And just like was said just a few minutes ago by Sheila, this still is the greatest country. But we've got to make sure that we just hadn't forgotten that. God bless each and every one of you. May God bless these United States.
Well, thank you, Robby, and I do want you to come back and visit us soon and give us updates, and you're always welcome back on the Weekend Vigilante, and God bless you, and again, you've got a David and Goliath scenario playing out, and again, as a believer and as a person who wants to bring in back that God bless America, and I mean, we've taken God out of everything, and, on a final note, I will just personally say that I think that's a really important thing to realize, that as things are steamrolling ahead for some of these globalists, that it is time. I think you've got I'm going to say it, I think there's a big spiritual battle going on in our continent, and I think it's time to get back to some of those roots. Those gritty forefathers brought us the Constitution, and I think a lot of them, it was fundamental Christianity at the helm. So again, I want to encourage you, and I want to thank you, and kudos to you for stepping up and saying earlier, I think something you said was really interesting. You said, why not be that guy? And one person can make a big difference. So we want to thank you again for coming on the program. And like I said, I encourage you to come back with us anytime.
Well, thank you so much.
Take care, Robby.
All right.
Good night. Good night,
Good night, Robin.
So, Tim, that was very interesting. Again, I guess the theme being liberty.
Yeah, well, Sheila, what I wanted to say was I was very impressed. I've run academic seminars and been involved in debates and so on. Those guys played intellectual and political dodgeball superbly well. And by that, I don't mean they were avoiding the ball. They were handling it so well. They didn't shy away from any question. They said when they were not too sure about things. I was very, very impressed with how they handled the interviews, and that's encouraging, particularly with Robby as a candidate, because it is that situation we're in now where, you're just another politician. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said, here comes the person with all his rhetoric and no substance. But I think that we heard a lot of substance there tonight, that we jumped all over the place, and he went right along with us. And he obviously had thought through all of the issues. He knew his geopolitics as well as his politics, and I think that's very, very impressive. But the main thing, of course, though, is that I think in both of them, they're both aware of the importance of leadership and leadership skills, and allowing people with those skills to come to the fore. Because even if our listeners don't want to get involved, they will get involved by supporting those people like that are willing to put their head on the media chopping block. And that's what's not been happening. What we've let happen is the media become the kingmaker and the kingbreaker. That they decide who they want in power, and they set about doing it, and then when they're in there, they start attacking them. The failure with Obama was they put him in power and then have worked to keep him there, instead of doing what the founding fathers said their job was, and that was to expose their failures and their lack of transparency. I think that Dr. Keith Abloh on Fox News, the psychiatrist, said that Obama's played the victim card brilliantly. That he's the victim of the end. Right, he's the victim. You know all about that, Sheila. But it really is
like. But this is the thing that I can never wrap my head around Obama. He's the quintessential Flexian, isn't he? Because although he's, you just mentioned something earlier, and we've mentioned this on other broadcasts. If somebody would just, start taking account of all these, unimpeachable offense. This is treason as outright flippin' treason this guy's committed, and yet nothing ever happens to Barry.
Well, I'd like to think that there's someone, especially in the U.S., a Mark Levine, for example, who is keeping track of all of the ways that he has bypassed the Constitution. And you can say, all right, under the idea of an executive order was that under an emergency you could use that, but he's made it standard practice. And of course, one of the things I didn't get to talk to Robby about that I wanted to talk about, we can do it maybe in another program, and that is the use of the bureaucracy. I mean, I've quoted Mary McCarthy. Right, I've quoted Mary McCarthy's comment before about bureaucracy is the rule of no one. It's the modern form of despotism. And nobody has exploited the bureaucracy better than Obama. I mean, look at the woman that pleaded the Fifth. There's somebody paid by the public, working for the public, and refuses to speak to the public. It is absolutely incredible. But, Fifth Amendment rights. But surely that's an abuse of that under those circumstances. When I think about, for example, James Hansen, who was the head of NASA, the Goddard Institute of Space Studies, who had a political career in that role. He appeared before Gore's 1988 committee and made statements that were scientifically incorrect. Sure. And I spoke to his boss, John Thone, and said, John, how was Hansen able to be so political as a bureaucrat? There is an act called the Hatch Act which limits the political activities of a bureaucrat. And he breached that so many times. And John Thone talked about this in Washington at a conference I was at. And he spoke to me afterwards privately about it. And he said, basically we got told as Hansen's boss, we got told from above, leave him alone. You cannot,
Tim, let's
don't touch
face it,
him.
You know, that's what I think so many people respect about you, and I certainly would never have had a co-host unlike you, because I'll tell you what you do is, despite lawsuits and all this pressure, I mean, you really don't just sit there and shut up and shrug your shoulders and go with the flow. I mean, you have been on the rooftop shouting about, the absolute atrocities that have been taking place in our nation, and I think it's just so refreshing that you have people that are, look at Robby, look at Robin, and by the way, for anybody that cares to know this, I think there's a brilliant article that he wrote that I'm going to post on all our websites, and it's a really interesting written piece on the healthcare. And, he is a brilliant writer, and I'll tell you, we need more people that are standing up for liberty instead of just going with this, going with the flow and doing what they're told, because, we've absolutely become a nation who loves their servitude, and that really bothers me, Tim.
Well, it does, and particularly because they're 50% or more of the population are followers, not leaders. And I'm not saying that in a negative or pejorative way. That's the way it is. If you get any group of animals, there are ones that'll be the leaders. And in biology and anthropology, or biology particularly, they talk about the alpha male, for example, who runs the show and dictates. Now, hopefully through political process, we're above that as humans, but nonetheless, there are people that are prepared to, and have natural abilities to lead. The difficulty is that we've got to allow the people, the 50% that want to be followers, not to consider them as sheep, but to consider them as what the leader has a responsibility to. That's what I heard from Robby. Robby kept coming back to, no, we the people. I'm speaking for the people. I'm not speaking for Robby. And I remember working with Peter Newman, the Canadian author. We were working on the Hudson Bay Company book, and we had long discussions about leadership and politics. And he said, there are only two people that get into politics. One group that says, I've got some ideas that can help the country, and the other group that say, I've got some ideas that can help myself. And he said the percentage changes from time to time, but that's all that changes. And he said right now we're in a decades where the vast majority are in there to help themselves. And what I hear from Robby is no, we need to change that, and we need to change it from the top. And of course, that's another idea. There's no Jewish proverb about a fish rots from the head down, and we're certainly seeing that. And if we can we can see people like Robby that genuinely understand that role of leadership and the subservience of the role of leadership, it's absolutely critical at this time. And of course, the other thing, if I could have a comment while they were still on, it's always darkest just before the dawn, so hopefully we're seeing the darkest right now, and the dawn's coming.
Well, Tim, here, this was something that was said in the chat room, and it was, of course, emailed in. Of course, we had a lot of people saying this statement. What are your personal thoughts about this? And while I think Robby, sort of addressed this, and I think it's commendable what he's doing, but what about this idea, though, that you don't get past what the globalists let, the rope they give you? I mean, we all know that Obama came in on the scene with a ready-made job with Rockefeller. I mean, these guys get permission from these technocratic oligarchs, so the clandestine elites, whatever you want to call them, the guys that hold the reins of power. What does that one person do with that sort of a scenario? I worry about that.
Well, I agree with you, but the point is that through the internet, through programs like this, through what Robby is doing, you've got to make people realize they're not alone. I mean, the whole comfort in being human, and we're gregarious creatures, is to know that other people are seeing the same problems that you're seeing, that if you do speak out, you're not just speaking for yourself. And I think that's the turning point. And as long as the people like the Soroses of the world and so on think that they can continue to cow and bully, and Robby spoke about bullying. And
yes,
he said you've got to confront bullies. And I know all about bullying. I went to a Catholic boarding school, so I know all about that.
Whoa. More importantly, let's talk. You know about bullying just from these climate hackers.
Oh,
I mean, let's face it, Al Gore was bullying pretty good, wasn't he, to all these people that were saying, listen, anthropogenic global warming, really?
Well, it's not only bullying in the sense of cutting you off or refusing, blocking your finance and all the rest of it, but it's bullying in the sense of taking the moral high ground. That it's like people, you see them on TV and it says environmentalist underneath the person. What does that mean? We're all environmentalists. How dare they take that position? What school did they go to get that category? And well, of course, what they're saying to you is, I care about the planet, I care about the children, I care about the future, but the rest of you don't. And that's bullying as far as I'm concerned. The other thing, by the way, the other thing, Sheila, by the way, is... I
want to really get away from this government telling us what to do. We tell the government what to do, not the other way around. And I really want to always hammer that point home because, like, when I saw the veterans tearing down those, as I call them, barricades, I'm telling you, that actually really stirred my heart because that was, as Robby so eloquently put this, that was the greatest generation ever. My grandfather was one of them. And I'm telling you right now, they were gritty men with testosterone. I mean, don't even get me started on what's happened to the males in this, across this continent and world. But these were gritty people who fought for freedom. And, it sounds so cliche to say that, but I mean, my heart was warmed when I saw those veterans out there and the truckers behind them and the bikers behind them. And you saw a lot of people in that march. And now we've got a Marine March coming soon. And I think this is an awakening. The winds of change are blowing, and I think it's really exciting. It's maybe, the paradigm shift that we all are looking for, Tim.
Okay, but I think that there's an important point to keep in mind here. With the Second World War, it was very clear of the good guys and the bad guys. And I can give you a specific example of that. There were, and I knew because we had German prisoners of war working for us at home. They brought them in the morning and they worked, and one guy, Wilhelm, and he'd been a jeweler in Berlin before the war. And he deliberately surrendered didn't surrender. He volunteered for the army, even though he was close to the age limit, and deliberately surrendered because he hated Hitler and he knew he'd get shot if he didn't go into the service. But anyway, there were no prisoners of war escaped from Britain during the war. There was only one German escaped, and that was from a Canadian camp, got into the States and down to Mexico. But no prisoners escaped. Hundreds of Allied prisoners escaped from Germany. And I thought about that and realized the difference was that everybody was clear about the good and the bad in Britain. Everybody was fighting the good fight, as we can see it, very clear. In Germany, of course, not so much. There were a lot of the German people, and you saw the attempts on Hitler's life by those officers and so on. But once we got into the Cold War, and then we got into the Korean War, and all of a sudden, terrorist wars, guerrilla warfare, all of a sudden the nature of war changed. And war became a political weapon, and that was one of the things that Robby was hinting at when he was talking about drawing the troops back from all those places where the Americans and the troops are now seen as imposing American will rather than defending the people. That's the change that's gone on. So the idea about war, and Churchill, of course, used to talk about the differences in the types of war. He said, for example, there were the War of Kings, where kings were fighting over territory, and they went and had professional armies that they paid for. I mean, how many people know that racing silks, the colors that jockeys wear, were originally the uniforms that a very wealthy landowner put on the troops that he sent to fight with the king. That's where racing silks came from, okay? Now, of course, the other war, the other extreme, are what Churchill pointed out are the wars of peoples. And they are the most vicious, the most nasty, the most deadly. The classic example, of course, are civil wars, and nobody knows that better than the U.S. More people died in the U.S. Civil War, and I stand to be corrected on this, but more than in the First and Second World War combined.
That is correct.
Right, and what we're seeing going on now is the nature of war, and when you look at the confusion that Obama's got, where he's trying to pull out of overseas, but he's also still trying to continue the war, and he thinks that by playing remote control with drones, somehow isolates himself from responsibility for what he's doing. In fact, it's making the U.S. more hated than having the troops there, because you imagine you're sitting there in a village in the mountains of Afghanistan, and suddenly a rocket comes out of the sky and blows up your neighborhood. How are you going to feel about the people that sent that to you, guided by some guy sitting in an office in San Diego? And it's a whole different situation, and I think that Robby would understand that, and I think his idea about bringing the troops back goes beyond just bringing the troops back, and sort of simple in a way, but profound in another way. But the joke was about the guy was the only place in England where you could practice free speech was Hyde Park Corner in London, and anybody could go there, put up a soapbox, literally a wooden box that soap was brought in, stand on it, and say whatever you wanted without fear of arrest or anything else. And this guy came with his soapbox, stood up on it, and started talking about the revolution, and then he says, "Come the revolution, we'll all wear shirts and ties." And a voice from the back said, "I don't want to wear a shirt and a tie." And the guy on the soapbox said, "Come the revolution, you'll do what you're bloody well told."
The Weekend Vigilante Show with Sheila Zilinsky, waging war on corruption.
This is a globally orchestrated meltdown to reshape the world into complete totalitarian global governance. Really, the end game here is eco-sinister, Luciferian eugenics plan. Ask yourself, how is it that out-of-control megalomaniac growth runs things? Tyranny, fear-mongering, drones, geopolitical chaos, financial crises, mass censorship.
If you're planning, you've got to plan in a way to defeat the existing system.
Mindless minions, they're walking around in sort of a zombie-like trance.
I don't know. I just don't know when exactly.
I certainly did not know anything.
There was no knowledge here at the White House.
Do these guys know anything?
Tune into the Weekend Vigilante Show with Sheila Zilinsky, Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern.